There are 4 super common but deadly pronunciation mistakes that every beginner learning European Portuguese makes without really realizing that they are doing it. They're the same 4 questions that come up pretty much every week when I sit down with my Portuguese Pro students in our live sessions. So in this video, I am going to cover all 4 of these, show you exactly how to fix each one so you can finally start speaking Portuguese like a pro. So the first one is pronouncing this vowel pair as I. So vowel pairs in Portuguese are very important. This is when 2 vowels are going to work together to make one sound. They are technically called a diphthong, which is just a fancy way of saying it. Now, the way that we're going to get to that one sound is by blending the individual sounds of these vowels. So an E is going to be E, and the I is going to be E. So we're going to blend E and E. A. Now, this trips up English speakers constantly. When we see these 2 letters, our brain wants to pronounce them like I, like the I in island or ice. But that's not what we get when we pull the letters apart and then put them together again. It's going to sound more like the A in say or hey. So a word like late is not going to be light, and sexta-feira is not going to be sexta-feira, okay? Now, what happens in Portuguese is the same as what happens in any other language. People are always going to have very slight differences in the way they speak. It could be regional, it could be generational, it could just be down to the person themselves. I always say that I grew up down the street from a friend who pronounces things completely differently to me. But what I want you to remember is this A sound is correct, okay? Even if you hear slight variations as you're traveling through Portugal, saying the A is still going to be good for you. So this is what I want people to remember. Sometimes you may hear a slight difference in the way the A is pronounced because maybe the stress is falling on that syllable. So for example, in a word like primeiro, because we're putting some stress on that syllable, it is going to open those vowels up a little bit more. But I don't want you to stress about it. If you're saying A, that's perfectly correct. Mistake number 2 is saying muito without a nasal sound. Now, this one is fun because there's actually a little history lesson behind it. Students ask me all the time, when I hear the word muito, it sounds like it's nasal, but there's no tilde there or anything. There's no M or N at the end, and those are usually our rules for nasalizing. So why does it sound like there's this invisible N floating around in the middle of the word? Well, the truth is that it did used to have a nasal sound. So originally, this word genuinely was muito. And then over time, we stopped using that tilde. The spelling got simplified, but the pronunciation stayed the same. So even today, you will hear native Portuguese speakers saying muito with that little nasal sound in the middle of the word. So this is one of those things you can go down a really fun rabbit hole if you're into language history. Lots of Portuguese words went through spelling reforms that took out a letter or took out an accent, but the way people pronounce them stayed the same. So if you've been saying muito, which is flat, no nasal hum in there, now you know why everybody else is sounding a bit different when they say it. Just nasalize that U, muito, and you'll sound like a native speaker. Quick reminder before we move on, if you've not grabbed my free pronunciation guide yet, you should get it now by clicking the link in the description below. We cover 7 of the trickiest sounds in Portuguese, along with native speaker audio. And if you're going to go through that guide right after watching this video, you will be so much more confident in learning and speaking European Portuguese. So go grab that now. So mistake number 3, it's one of the very first words that we will be learning, but it's really difficult to pronounce because we have 3 vowels in it and we have a tapped R, okay? The word is queria. It means I would like, so this is going to be how you're going to be ordering your coffee or your beer, for example, when you get to Portugal. It's the most useful and polite word in the whole language. Almost every English speaker that I teach gets it wrong on the first try. They might say queria, okay? They want to pronounce that U as a qua, But as I've mentioned before, a QUI or a QUE in Portugal means we're not going to hear the U. It's just going to be a K. K. That's the first syllable. Something else people always want to do is open up the E. Que. Now, I've done lots of videos on how important closed vowels are in Portuguese, so I'll link some of them in the description as well. But rather than a que, we want a k. This is the secret to sounding really Portuguese. You're going to have to close down your mouth and close down those vowels. So we have the first syllable covered now, k. Now, the second syllable is the ri. Now, this tapped R sound is really difficult to do because in English, we're used to saying R as our R sound. If you say a R, you can see that your tongue is kind of suspended in the middle of your mouth. It's not flapping anywhere. But in Portuguese, we do want to make it go R. Tap on the roof of our mouth. That's what we call a tapped R. So lots of people want to say Queria. But that R isn't the sound we want. It's a R. Queria. And finally, we need to close down that A at the end. People want to go nice and open, Queria, but actually we want to close it down. Queria. Another closed vowel, just like we had at the beginning. Once you know how to break down a word syllable by syllable like this, you can do it with any difficult Portuguese word. You don't have to brute force memorize every single one. You learn the sounds and the building blocks, and then you can assemble them yourself. That's the framework that I use with all of my Portuguese Pro students. The final thing I see people do a lot, which technically isn't a mistake, but it's not something that I would advise in the beginning, and that is chopping off the ending of words. People hear a word like obrigado, and they hear that the Portuguese people say it like obrigado, and they ask me, well, should I be pronouncing it that way as well? Surely I'm going to sound more natural if I'm copying them. But my answer is no, not when you're an absolute beginner, and here is why. We need to be building a good foundation and actually understanding how sounds and syllables work. So if you're going to be dropping off sounds at this stage as a beginner, you're going to have big holes in your knowledge when you get further down the line. So even though in English, when we're casually chatting to a friend, we wouldn't say, do you want to go to the movies? You'd say, do you want to go to the movies? But if when we were learning English from scratch, we learnt it that abbreviated way, as I say, we wouldn't have the full grammar, we wouldn't have the full picture of the language, and that's what I really need you to have, because that's the foundation that we're going to be building on from here. So Portuguese works the same way. Native speakers can and will drop off word endings because they already have this knowledge and these templates of how these full words look and sound. But as a learner, you don't have those yet. If you copy them, you're just mimicking the result without that foundation. And this is why people who try to skip this step of learning all of the syllables are actually going to take longer to sound natural, because you're building a house without a solid foundation. So here's what I want you to do. Don't say tarde, say tarde. Don't say verde, say verde. We actually want to hear all the syllables. Then of course your speech just will naturally speed up over months of practice, and those endings will start to reduce. That is when you can actually sound more like a local, when you have all of the knowledge in place. So there was one more pronunciation mistake I really wanted to get to today, and that is the NH sound. Nya, like castanha or sonho. That's a whole other video on its own, so if you do want me to do that, drop a comment below and let me know that that's something else you'd like to learn. You can also let me know any other words or sounds that you've been struggling with Portuguese, and I can do a video on those as well. I've said it before and I will say it again, pronunciation is the foundation of everything in Portuguese. I've taught hundreds of English speakers exactly this, and the ones who fix their pronunciation foundations first are the ones who actually start speaking Portuguese, not just studying it. And that's why in our pro method, the P comes first. And that's what I teach in my free workshop, Speak Portuguese Like a Pro. We walk you through the pronunciation, the grammar that you actually need, and my tips for understanding real life Portuguese. The link to register is in the description. Grab your seat now, and I will see you there. Ciao for now.